Welcome to the Soul Tapes podcast. My name is Adam Cruz.
My name is Antonio Reyes.
And we are in episode 24. And today, I want to do a part 2, somewhat of a last conversation talking about nurturing your creativity.
Yep.
And Antonio, you kind of mentioned at the end of the last episode, there was something that you said that I really think would be a great way to kind of expand on this conversation. Thinking about that topic of nurturing your creativity, I think the question a lot of people would have is, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And well, if you...
No, keep going.
Got it. So the thing that you said at the end of the last episode was talking about what Pastor T.D. Jakes, that quote about if you want to be able to handle more responsibility, you need structure, right?
More structure. And
as a creative, I think, we tend to have this kind of love-hate relationship with structure.
Yeah.
I know for me, I've experienced that a lot. So I think that would be a really good conversation to expand upon as far as, the value of structure in the life of a creative.
Yeah, I think that's that quote right there messed me up a little bit because it's true, he was talking about how if you want more responsibility, you have to elevate your structure. You have to create more structure in your life. And as a creative, as someone who was young a couple years ago, coming to my young adult life, to become more an adult now, structure is not something, or discipline is not something that we love, we enjoy. We feel that restricts ours, and we don't think that there's freedom on the other side of structure and discipline. But if you think about in a money place, like freedom is on the other side of your structuring the way you spend your money. There's freedom. So I think that if we don't develop a structure in our creative process, our lives can be very scattered. Our lives can be very scattered. And the problem with that is that we probably won't accomplish things effectively. We will feel probably overwhelmed. We will feel maybe with a sense of disappointment and even to a place of depression sometimes. Because we're not accomplishing certain things. When we don't have a structure, I feel like our life is just very flat, very scattered. And the challenge is for us to develop that in our lives. And that's what we want to talk about today. Yeah,
I agree. I think about, I have a kind of a story. Like when I graduated college, I started making music when I was 16. So graduated college around 21 and, got my first full-time job. And it was, pretty... really good job, good position, had a lot of responsibility. And it was the first time in my life, I think, that I really was put in a place where I really was experiencing what it meant to be responsible for a lot. And someone who's kind of, for me being really more, on the creative side, even though I was able to kind of graduate with a business degree, I always felt like I had this kind of push and pull with that. So I remember, working in this job for about 2 years, and I was getting to a point at the end where, man, I was really wrestling with myself, just struggling with living a life of structure and balance and trying to kind of, be able to create music, but still work this job and be responsible for a lot of things. And I came to a point where I actually made the decision to quit. And the reason why I was kind of convincing myself and, now looking back at it, that, I felt like this job was holding me back from being able to create more music. And I felt like, well, if I just put myself in this position where, that's my main focus, then I think I'll be able to produce more. And so what ended up happening is that once I quit the job, I thought, well, maybe I'll get something that'll be, more flexible, but I'll still be able to make, decent money, maybe not as much, but I'll have more time. And that was the thing for me was, if I have more time, I'll be able to do more. But what ended up happening was, because I didn't have this foundation and this structure in the sense of having a job that was providing, and I was able to kind of, pay my bills and do what I had to do. Now all my energy went into having to work more in order to provide and to do what I needed to do. And so because I had a more flexible job, it was less structured, it was less, consistent. I was actually became more of a slave to that, because I now was in a place where if I didn't put in the hours, I wasn't going to make the money that I needed to make.
Yeah.
And so it actually kind of backfired on me, and I found myself for 6 months in this place of working and not making as much money, and I wasn't dedicating the time that I thought I was going to have to music. So it's just crazy how I kind of found myself in that place of thinking that, letting go of this structure of this job that was consistent was actually going to help me, but that was actually couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, and you point something out, the misconception that we have is that if we just have more time, we were able to accomplish so and so on, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is not the time. The problem is what are we developing to sustain what we have in that season of life, right? Because obviously, many of us, there's hobbies, there's things that we want to pursue, or even, things that we enjoy that our work or responsibilities in this side don't allow us perhaps to be fully immersed into what we want.
Yeah.
But the problem is that if we keep having this misconception, if I just have more time, well, no, what we need is more structure.
Yeah.
We need to develop the structure in our lives that can sustain that, the disciplines, what we do in our day matters. The way we do it, the time that we spend, intentionality, if we don't do that, we're going to get ourselves caught in this place where, once again, it's going to be disorder. It's going to be chaos, we're not going to be able to put things in place.
Yeah.
And I think that, in our day-to-day life, what do our structure look like? What did that look like?
Yeah.
Because, man, obviously we admire a lot of people, and people that I admire, there are some people that their structure of life is insane. From waking up at 5:30 in the morning to read a book, to read in the devotional life, the spiritual people, pastors, to going to the gym. After that, they go take a shower, they go to their office, they do what they have to do, and they do things, and then by 8 and 9 they disconnect from their phone. They don't have their phone with them. They don't go to sleep with their phone. Those little things is bro, that's an insane life.
Yeah.
But they can sustain a lot in their lives. So once again, obviously we're not on the same place, but the way we live life right now matters.
Yeah.
And the structure that we develop matters.
Yeah. To
be able to produce more, to be able to create more.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a quote that I saw, we just kind of had the 1 year kind of anniversary of Kobe passing away. And I saw someone post this and I reposted it, and I don't remember exactly everything that it said, but basically I really admired what he was saying, in what Kobe was basically, a quote from him. And it was basically saying this idea of, if you want to live your dream, right? Living out your dream. He's it was basically saying don't get fixated on that living out your dream is a one moment experience. And he was saying living out your dream in the relation in the context of basketball for him was waking up every single day to go to the gym and practice and everything that he did throughout the week before even game day. All of those moments of putting in the work was living the dream. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the, necessarily the championship moments. It wasn't the game day experiences. Yeah. It was the daily grind of putting in the work. It was basically the quote saying that's living the dream. Mm-hmm. Yep. And when I read that, I was man, that is, because those are the moments of what are him disciplining himself to be at the gym earlier than everyone, to stay later than everyone, to put in the work, the things that people aren't asking of him, but that he puts on himself. And I just thought man, that's crazy because we don't view it that way. Yeah. We view living out the dream as those game day experiences.
It's going to free us from responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We don't have to work as hard because, we made it. And I love that quote that he said. It was just like, man, it just really put into perspective that in order for us to kind of live out our dreams, it's going to require us to have structure. It's require us to be disciplined, and it's not going to negate the necessity to work hard on our craft and whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I was sitting down with a business owner. This business owner, man, I think he told me he was bringing almost $1 million to his business right now. He's doing great. And we were just talking about business, like how to own a business, small business, and so on. He told me straight up, he was like, don't believe the lie that having a business is going to give you more freedom.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we're talking about. Like, we believe that when we're doing what we want to do is going to free us to do whatever else we want to do. I'm not quite sure. It's going to free us from the responsibility. It's going to give us more time. We're going to be able to, do something else. And the reality is, it's not true. It's just, but I think that is very important, and this is a struggle that we have. I think we have our generation, not just our generation, but, I remember sitting down with as I was pastoring people and walking with people, they would come to me, I need help, I want to be better, I want to grow, in my relationship with God. And part of that piece is your spiritual development, right? Your spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And it's your investment in your structure and your disciplines and the way you engage with certain practices, right? And many times the problem that will happen is that they would jump in. They say, okay, let's do it. A week later, I was like, how's it going? Man, it's just so hard. It's just hard. Like, of course it's hard.
Yeah.
Developing a structure is hard.
Yeah.
Developing discipline is hard. But okay, and they want this outcome in a couple of days, what people have developed for a decade.
Yeah.
The people that have put to work for 5 years, for 20 years, I want what you have, but but they don't know the level of structure and what we have to say no to it, and the things that we have invested in, the moments that we don't want to do things, they don't see that.
Yeah.
And I think we have default to this desire, this I feel like this mentality of like, well, if I don't enjoy it, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't stimulate me, it's not worth for me investing in it.
Or if it doesn't come naturally, or if it doesn't something that I can just kind of default to. Because the thing is, we usually default to comfort. We usually default to things that are easy. And I think that's what people are looking for. It's like, well, how can I, get the outcome that I want in the easiest way possible without having to put in all that work, which is ultimately the foundation of the issue. I was literally thinking about this in my own life, even this year, where I'm like, I used to always have those same exact thoughts. Like, how do I, man, I wish I could develop my, spiritual disciplines, where I could, meditate, 20, 30 minutes a day, where I could, read the Bible, do whatever, pray and all that. And then, quarantine hits and I'm thinking, oh, now I'm home all the time. I should have plenty of time to do that. But the reality is that if it's not about time, like we were saying. It's not about having the time. It's about making the time. It's about actually developing that structure and discipline. And I think I don't want to kind of talk about this without acknowledging that, yes, it is a very difficult thing for a lot of us to do, because we're not naturally, in that way of it's just hard, right? It's just hard for us to do. So I think, that's the thing that we have to kind of get over. I think a lot of time we use that as the excuse. Well, it's just hard, like you're saying. People saying that. We need to kind of acknowledge that it's hard, and then ask ourselves, well, how bad do we want it?
Yeah, and I think that's important. I was gonna go there. Like the priorities in your structure that you're gonna develop is with the idea of like, what matters to me.
Yeah.
What do I value? Do I value, peace and joy and enjoying what I do and be able to be productive and active in what my goals? Do I value that? All right. If you do value that, then you have to develop this, and if you don't care, well, you're not going to do it. Like, I think that right now being at home is difficult, to develop that, even for me, to me, well, we have the opportunity to have like a closed coffee shop here,
Yeah.
To me, I wake up every morning. I think my day goes along the lines of like, I wake up every morning. I try to go to work out, or if I have to go to work, I'll go to work. But if I have the time, I'll go and do something physical, come back, take a shower, eat some breakfast, watch a little, maybe like 45 minutes of a TV. Then I bounce to a place, either a coffee shop or a place where I can work, because I know how I am. I can't work from home, unfortunately. So I go to a place where I can do that. Afterwards, if I'm gonna hang out with friends, if we're gonna record this, I separate time for that. If I'm like gonna meet with someone, and if I have extra time, I go back to work out.
Yeah,
because I don't want to be the type of person. And once again, I'm not saying you're not gonna have a break, you're not gonna disconnect from things.
Yeah,
yes, you do. But the thing is that if we don't develop that, once again, we're gonna default to being scattered, being disciplined, being consumed by other things that are not helpful. And I think that's a problem, and I think in developing your structure, you're going to develop what triggers you, what inspires you, what fuels you, you know, and that's important because you want to do more of that. The problem is that when we find ourselves consumed by things, when we feel depressed, when we feel anxious, is that we're consumed by the things that we don't want to do. If we don't invest time in the things that we do want to do, right? Yeah. And obviously work is sometimes things that we don't want to do. Of course, but then out of that, can we find things that fuel us outside, we were just talking about it. Like, a couple of days I was working with my uncle, and he's labor. I've been outside working. Come back, I was exhausted. But afterwards, we were just having a conversation. We were gathering small group and Zoom. We were just having conversations about, faith and spirituality and so on. And that just brought me to life. Yeah. And when I finished the conversation, I was like, man, I don't even feel tired no more. Yeah. So I think that in your structure, and when you develop your structure, make sure that you have things that fuel you and replenish your energy, emotionally, spiritual, physically. Yeah. Man, I know that we're not in the best shape, but we're trying. We're trying. We go to work out, and man, that's a huge part. Yeah. That we don't discipline ourselves. Go for a walk if you don't run. If you can go to a gym, go to a gym. If you can pay more for a trainer, pay for a trainer so you can push yourself. Man, that piece of our structure in our physical life is so important.
Yeah, I think what happens is we overvalue this idea of things happening organically. Yes. As people who are creative, as people who maybe find joy in those organic moments, or especially when you're like someone who's like, who does like create things like music or you like to write, or you like to sing, or musician, or whatever it is that is your thing. There's this thing of like when things just happen organically. We always say like those are the best moments, But the reality is that I think there's a difference between, and I think this is where the ultimate like underlying thing is this idea of longevity. Yep. If you want longevity in your creativeness, you have to have structure and discipline in your life, because the reality is that that's why we find ourselves in these places where I have a friend of mine who, this is the conversation I always have, is, they're a writer. They like to write. Yep. And then I'll ask like, oh, when's the last time you have, written, invested time in your book or whatever they were creating? Yeah. And it'd be like, oh, I just haven't written in a while. It's been, some time, and I'm just so exhausted. I feel like I can't put the energy towards that. And it's like, well, that's the thing, is like, it's like, you might, and then it's like, oh, I have these moments where, I'll have a night and I'll write, and I'll write all this stuff. But then, months later, I haven't written anything. And I think that's the problem, is that a lot of creatives usually tend to struggle with finishing projects. And this is something where, to me, like, you know, coming from a background of business as well, is there is a reason why in business we create systems for things, is because when you create a system, that system is ultimately created for you to have a start and an end to something. Is that you're going to go through this process, and this process is created specifically for you to complete something. And for creatives, that sounds terrible, that idea of a system and creating those things, but those are the ways.
It's a cuss word for them, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like a cuss word. It's like, those are the things that are gonna help us to really, and that's the thing, is like, as a creator, the best moment is when you're done, right? You know, when you finish creating something, you finish writing a sermon, you finish whatever, you know, creating an art piece, but you never get to that if you don't have discipline, if you don't have that system in place.
Like for me, man, like I look back right now, obviously you and I, we're part of a teaching team, you know, where we have the opportunity to preach and share a message. But before pandemic, that was something I would do every single Sunday. Now when I look back, I'm like, how did I pull up like a message every week? And plus having all the responsibilities, like right now, sometimes I don't have in me to write one sermon, right? But I remember before, through my week, I will plan during the week. Okay, this day I'm gonna do this. This day I'm gonna do this. On Monday I'm gonna take a break. On Tuesday I'm gonna brainstorm. I have a notebook where I just put my thoughts. I just throw like any thought that I have. On Wednesday I'm just gonna try to put a structure into the thoughts. On Thursday I'm gonna finish the structure, and on Friday I'm just gonna finish the whole thing. So on whole Friday and Saturday, I will practice what I wrote. So on Sunday, I was able to communicate, right? And I know people that they find themselves stressed the day before, writing a message before they have to preach, and it's like, but it just doesn't work that way. You're overwhelmed and anxious because you didn't put the time before. If you put the time, I noticed this. So when I speak in English or when I preach in English, it takes me twice as time that if I do it in Spanish. So I noticed the connection on Sunday when I have to preach in English and I didn't feel satisfied in the way I execute my message. I noticed that I didn't put enough time during the week. I know that that's a big part of it. Because when I put enough time during my week, I'm able to execute better, you know? So all has to do with like planning, structure, right? And can you create in structure? You can develop and create in structure. And
I think a lot of times the problem is that with structure and systems is people get, and this is what I always talk to like college students about, you know, working at a university, is that I always tell people, because for me, I had to learn this too, is don't think about systems and structure in the context of somebody else's life. Is we always think, in order for me to do this, I have to do it like that person.
That's good.
And I always tell people, and especially like young people, is find what works for you. So you have your system for how you put together a message. Completely. You do it the way works for you. You don't do it. You might learn from other people, get ideas, but you're going to ultimately create your own system that works for you. And that's the way you're going to find success in it. And it doesn't mean that, I'm sure you have had plenty of moments when you were in that zone of creating like that consistently, where you had those days where you're like, I don't feel like doing it, right? I'm sure you had those moments, and it's like, but what I learned is, as someone who like writes songs, is like, I've had people always encourage me and tell me, you need to write as much as possible, even if whatever you write is trash, even whatever you come up with sounds terrible or you don't like it. That doesn't matter. The point is just to flex that muscle and that consistency of developing and working through that system.
And that's what I wanted to go. I think a lot of creatives struggle with consistency. There's there's moments where they're like, well, this season I created this much, and this season I didn't create anything. This season and that's something that, of course, not every single day you're gonna feel inspired. Of course, but you have to ask yourself if this is because I'm lacking discipline and structure, or I'm lacking inspiration, whatever it is. But the problem is that consistency and creativity is important. The people that inspire us, they create music, they develop, I don't know, like books and so on. obviously there's some consistency in the way they actually write.
Yeah.
And the way that they produce. Imagine if like, Drake, one day produces an album and the next 5-6 years he doesn't produce anything because he doesn't feel like he has it. Like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I'm sure they producing music, like you say.
Yeah.
Some of them they're good, some of them they're trash, some of them they're like some other ones are great. So as you keep creating and throwing things, you're gonna become better at what you do, but also you're gonna start finding your niche. You're gonna start finding like, oh, I'm good at this. Oh, I see how I do this. So I think that's very important, that in consistency you're also gonna find your flow. But if you cut your flow, if you cut the consistency, you're not gonna find the flow that it was gonna work for you.
Yeah. And the reality is that when we hear a final product from an artist like that, we never get to hear the 3, 4, 5, 6, 20 songs that didn't make the album.
Yes.
The ones that were not good. No. The ones that, so when we hear the final product, I do this all the time where I hear a song, I'm like, how did you create that? That sounds amazing. But we don't have the luxury of listening to all the songs and albums that didn't make the cut. There was can you look up on my Instagram real quick? Hopefully it's still on there on my story. If not, I'll just paraphrase the quote. But there was a quote that I reposted of Denzel Washington, and he was basically saying something along the lines of like talking about this idea of embarrassment and saying like embarrassment is kind of like, if you're not, is it on there?
Yeah.
So it says embarrassment is the cost of entry. If you aren't willing to look like a foolish beginner, you'll never become a graceful master. And when I read that, I was like, yo, that is 100% right. If you're not willing to put yourself out there to show people the progress of your creation, man, you never get to that place of being what's considered a master professional in it.
Yeah. I think my last thoughts on it is sit down, put something on paper.
Yeah.
Even though if it's hard, even if you fail to follow through with that process, sit down, create structure in your life, point out, what do I want to feel like? Nurture your creativity, nurture your spiritual life, nurture your physical life, like nurture those things and spend time doing that. And as you keep moving forward, it might require more and more and more, and it might not feel that you're enjoying life, but you will find enjoyment in like developing the structure, because it will allow you to do more and produce more. So sit down and think about it. What does work for me? What is that I want to accomplish? What is a priority for me? And when you point those things out, they develop the structure in your day and your week to do that. And give yourself a time to rest. Give yourself a time to do anything, to watch Netflix or whatever you want. Give yourself that, but don't default to like, it's too hard. Don't default to saying it's just I'm not a person in structure. None of us are. That's what I tell everyone. Oh, it's too hard. Trust me, it's so hard. It's difficult. I completely understand. But if you stay there, you're not going to jump to the other side. So do it. Sit down, develop it, and try to follow through.
That's
my thought.
My kind of like what the way I've done that in my life is, I had this moment where I like did like a fast for like 3 weeks, and I remember I fasted soda. And this was when like, I was a consistent, like I would drink soda, and I remember I fasted for 3 weeks, and after those 3 weeks, I really like stopped drinking soda altogether. And that's kind of like my encouragement. My last kind of thoughts is that give yourself like a timeline, like say, hey, I'm going to try this system and this structure for a month, for 6 weeks, for 3 weeks. And at that end of that, see how it went. Because the thing is, I think a lot of times we get overwhelmed by this idea of forever, or of I always have to live this way, I always have to do it this way, and the reality is like life is seasons and moments and that change. So sometimes we just have to give ourselves this time to develop some habits, and you might see what worked and see what didn't work. So do that. Give yourself a timeline, try something, and really commit to, because I think sometimes when we do that, we find ourselves more committed because we say, okay, I'm only going to do this for 3 weeks. I'm only going to do this for a month. So yeah, find that timeline to try out some ways of structure and discipline, and then you might actually surprise yourself where you see like, oh no, this is something I can do, and that might encourage you to see that you can actually do more than you think you can.
Yeah, and I mean, as you keep going, you're gonna be able to develop more and more and more. If you want to grow, if you want to evolve, there's gonna be something that we have to, like, even in myself right now, like I'm rethinking of the way I'm gonna restructure my life in the future, you know. So I think that all of us go through that space, you know, and there's things that we probably remove from our lives and adapt some new ones, but there's some elements that will probably stay with us forever. We just have to find the time and if they're a priority for us.
Yeah. I love it, man. You know, I think it's a good conversation as people who might, you know, find themselves trying to create more, trying to figure out what's been keeping them stuck, especially in a year that's just been so unpredictable. So hopefully, you know, you found this valuable. You found some tools, some tricks, and some ways that you can nurture your creativity. Again, whether you're a creative who's, you know, trying to start a business or trying to maintain a business, or someone who just knows that they need to maintain these creative things in their life, and just find structure. Sometimes you just need, you may not resonate with being a creative, but you know you need more structure and discipline in your life. So, you know, again, this is the Soul Taste Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
We out.
I've been going so hard, I gotta see this through. I know what life is like when people don't believe in you. I took some time to really question all my motives. I was climbing to the top without a check for where I'm going, hey.